Hello, my name is Haley Einsweiler, and I'm a student in Dr. Brian Zigman's Art History class, Survey of Western Art 2. Today I will be discussing an altarpiece of Mannerism style titled The Entombment of Christ. Jacopo Carucci created this oil painting in 1528 for the Capone Chapel in Santa Felicita in Florence, Italy. Its size is roughly 10 by 6 feet. Carucci commonly went by the name Pontormo because this was the town in which he was born. To begin, I will talk about what is illustrated on this panel. Art historians have claimed that Christ has been lowered from the cross, and the figure of Christ was derived from Michelangelo's Rome Pieta. It is clear that now he is surrounded by several figures, including his mother Mary. Neither the cross nor the tomb is pictured. This idea is puzzling to understand because Pontormo titled the painting The Entombment of Christ. So one would think that the tomb would be present where Jesus would be put after he's lowered from the cross, which he is being now, or maybe the cross would be present as it was the act of him being lowered. And that would have been called a deposition. But anyways, it seems as though Mary was once holding Christ's hand, and there's little ground, and there's only a single cloud in the sky. In fact, I can't quite tell where the ground ends and the sky begins because Pontormo has compiled so many figures in a small area and there's no perspective. And without knowing where the ground ends, it makes me think that the people in the back are floating because they are higher up than the people in the front of the painting. Pontormo has used soft colors and lighting in his painting. The colors that he chose for the figure's garments are various colors, and they range from like an orange red to a deep yellow to a pink, green, and blue. But there does not really seem to be a focal point as the figures, their eyes are looking in many different directions, and it almost seems as if the figures are moving in a circular shape, similar to the shape of the frame, kind of that like upside down view. And I made a conclusion that there are really no sharp angles in the picture. I really think that Pontormo's composition is a strange one after looking at paintings and sculptures from the Renaissance period, partly because the figures are all strung out across the picture, and the body positions just do not seem realistic. To me, the bodies have been elongated, and some figures are positioned in unnatural poses. For example, the figure holding Christ's lower extremities is supporting him while being on his tiptoes, and this is impractical for a human being. The facial expressions also appear as masks and not real emotions. But after doing more readings, I learned that this artificiality is a characteristic of the Mannerism period, of which when this painting was created, in the year of 1528. And Mannerist products were often complex and lacked a clear focal point, which is clearly identified in Pontormo's piece. If you look at Jesus, there are many hands surrounding the upper half of his body, and it is somewhat difficult to picture whose limbs belong to who. This idea is complex. So Pontormo was an Italian Mannerist painter. He was not interested in stability or balance like the Renaissance artists were. The Mannerist period came after the Renaissance, and these artists, quote-unquote, broke the rules of the High Renaissance. Some well-known artists in the Renaissance period were Michelangelo, Leonardo, and Raphael. The Renaissance heavily focused on naturalism, unlike the Mannerists. Artists during this period used perspective to create vanishing points, and vanishing points serve as a viewer's focal point on the painting. Like I have mentioned before, Mannerists painted unnatural poses and lacked clear focal points. In addition, they also lacked a clear subject of their work of art. There is little in the Entombment of Christ to help a viewer understand its subject. Mannerism derives from the Italian word manieria, meaning the quality of style, of stylishness. This period was late Renaissance. This art was different than the perfection and harmony of the Renaissance. And the beginnings of this art style is evident in the later work of Michelangelo and Raphael. Mannerism was an art style that focused on the human form, depicted complicated poses, and not always realistic settings. The paintings contained unrealistic spatial proportions, and the figures were often elongated and exaggerated. They were positioned in imaginative and complex poses. But the Mannerist movement provided the link between the Renaissance perfection and the emotional Baroque art that later developed. Mannerist artists created a style that was characterized by artificiality and artiness. So it's clear that Pontormo broke away from the high Renaissance period and created more of a personal and expressive style. And when I found more of his paintings online, it's clear that he was primarily a religious painter. And however, this is Pontormo's greatest masterpiece that has survived. Thank you.